Welcome to the Pink Lady Posse podcast, where women over 50 take a fresh look at living, toss out tired stereotypes, and say a big heck yes to what's next. I'm your host, Sandy Parker, and around here, we challenge limitations, rewrite the story on aging, and reclaim our power, pleasure, and purpose. Why? Our next years are not about a decline. They are our big reveal. Let's go. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Parker Martinez with the Pink Lady Posse podcast, and I'm here today with Leah Stiles because today is a really important day for our country and in my heart, and that's because it's Veterans Day, and Leah's a veteran. Thank you for your service, Leah.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, so my husband was in the military for 30 years, retired military, his son's military, and we just have a huge old heart for everybody who put themselves out on the line for me and for our. I had a little charm one time that said, "Sleep tight, a soldier has your back tonight." And that's really the way I feel, especially, now more than ever. So, I want to ask you, first of all, what is it like to be a woman who's a veteran?
That's a good question. And I bet everybody kind of has a different answer. All service members pave a path, right? Everybody serves in a different time, in a different place, in a different branch, in a different job, at a different rank. And so it's a different experience for everybody. But when I think about some of the women that initially paved that path in the military and the path that they laid so that the rest of us could come through and then pave our portion of the path so that the ones behind us can come through and then pave their portion. That's kind of the way that I look at it, is just that it's a journey, it's an experience, and just like anything, we have to leave it better than the way we found it for those around us and those coming after us.
Now, you were in the Navy.
I was.
Yeah. And then you got out of the Navy. And tell me just a little bit about what that identity shift feels like.
That's different. Yeah. So I retired after 20 years. And interestingly enough, my husband retired the very same day. So we served our entire careers together. Yes. And then we passed the torch to our son, who's Navy, he's active duty Navy now. And so it was definitely an interesting time to retire. It was mid-COVID. We retired on the same day. The day we retired, we packed up in Virginia and moved down to Orlando. I said I wanted to build a house and watch the fireworks from my backyard, the Disney fireworks. And so that's what we did. It was hard. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I thought I was fully prepared. I'm one of those type A, fully prepared kind of people. I had done the full tap class. I'd asked all their, lessons learned and points. And it was still very, very difficult to lose that identity to everything from what do I even wear every day to at that point, we were down to just one child and she was turning 18 and essentially really a roommate here now, and an adult. And so the empty nesting thing in combination, but the world hadn't really opened back up yet. It was
What?
interesting.
Well, I'm just going to insert something here because I'm with Pink Lady Posse, and we know that women between the ages of 50 and 90 go through 5 to 7 major life transitions: downsizing, caregiving, empty nesting, a lot of different things. And that is called liminal space. So, just a little bit of education in here for my audience, and that is liminal space is when you leave something a threshold, and you're not yet constituted in a new threshold. For example, you get married, you leave your parents' house or your single life, and now you're in a state of marriage. So, that state change can be disorienting. And especially if you don't know you're in a state of change like that, it can be really disorienting. So I can imagine with the empty nesting and the move and the retiring And your husband retiring, that is like a double whammy of liminal space. Did you
It
find
was.
yourself acting out in any ways?
No, not so much acting out, more like shutting down.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time realizing that I was staring at a blank wall.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
That,
I was disoriented a lot. And I tried to jump in right away the very next week into a 9 to 5 job that was not in my field. It was a completely different field. And I was like, oh, well, they offered it was insurance. They offered insurance qualification for us to get for free. So I went through, I got my insurance license. I was like, well, I'll just work at an insurance office. It didn't feel right from the moment. I walked in wearing civilian clothes, trying to act like I was a civilian, but I didn't know how to be one and how to live in a 9 to 5. And they have their own language, just like the Navy has their own language. And I was just like, this does not fit. And I would cry on my way to work. I would cry on my lunch break. I would
oh.
cry on my way home. Like, this, I don't know what I thought it was going to be, but this is not it.
Well, I know women who retire feel that way, right? Like now I wake up and I go, what do I do? And so that identity shift is real. And no matter what age or what stage you're in, you do sort of seek a purpose. And I know you found one.
I found one.
So, first of all, how did you find it and what is it?
So I did not have on my bingo card, my retirement bingo card, to found a nonprofit organization, but that's exactly what I ended up doing. So, Sydney, on my journey of serving for 20 years, I also had an eating disorder for 30 years. So, well before I joined the Navy, I was 11 when my eating disorder began. And so I joined the military, what I call eating disorder informed. I was very mental health informed. And so I came in with like a different perspective, right? Knowing this already. And actually, right after I finished boot camp, my first day of A school was 9/11. And so that's actually how I met my husband. I turned to him and we panicked, we trauma bonded, and 24 years later, we're still together. 25 years, we're still together.
Oh,
Looking at it from the mental health lens, I saw a shift around 9/11 and how we learned to talk about post-traumatic stress and how leaders started to learn about it. And then our peers, as shipmates, we learned how to recognize it. We had always thought that it was the generation before us, that that wasn't our generation, or that if we didn't go to combat, there was no such thing as post-traumatic stress. So those were some of the myths and the misconceptions, of that time. And I really saw a transition of how we came to learn and start to understand PTS. And knowing that, I was already eating disorder informed, I kept thinking, well, the eating disorder conversation must be coming right behind this one. It will follow, post-traumatic stress. There's a lot of similarities in how it manifests and how we recognize it and how we should be educated and learn how to support it and how to get past the misconceptions and, the confusing or the stigma and all of that. And it never really happened.
mm,
And I really kind of always wish somebody else would do it, right? I always thought it was somebody else would do it, but, you know, fast forward to my retirement, and I was really working on healing from my eating disorder. I had almost died towards the end of my career. I ended up living in a hospital for almost 2 years on an NG tube. So I was only getting nutrients from a tube up my nose. They offered me palliative care. They didn't think that I could or would get better. I wanted to fight back. I realized that finding my purpose through founding a nonprofit organization is and was the tool that I needed to get better. I found my purpose by filling the gap that I saw and that I recognized for so many years. That I recognized myself as somebody with lived experience, as a leader. I retired as a senior chief, I retired as E8. So a lot of people I was leading, I knew were struggling. And now, my son is an active duty sailor. And while he doesn't struggle with an eating disorder by any sense, we know that the next generation is struggling. We know that 1/3 of females and 1/5 of males in the military are struggling with an eating disorder.
okay, wait. This is going too fast. First of all, I have to admit, I'm not sure I know what an eating disorder is that would leave you on a feeding tube. So, like, I know of the eating disorder, like is on Dr. Phil, where they don't eat and they're so skinny and they're trying to save their life. And so, are there different types of eating disorder? I mean, sorry, I
Yeah.
don't know.
No, this is good. And this is why we have these conversations because people think they do know, or it is even better when people admit that they don't know. And they are getting information from Dr. Phil, the Lifetime channel, the 80s, the 90s. And so I'm so happy you asked that question. Yes, Sandy, there are 8 different eating disorders. So you named the one, you said, well, I don't understand how you would end up on an NG tube. My eating disorder is anorexia. Well, a lot of people from the media believe that anorexia means tiny, small, skin and bones. And in fact, that's less than 6% of people with an eating disorder fall into the underweight category. The other 94% have never fallen into the underweight category.
Okay, so if all right, so what is that anorexia then? Because I would not think that was your eating disorder.
I know a lot of people struggle with that. And especially, I go base to base and I teach military leadership how to recognize eating disorders. And they kind of thought that too. Well, if my division, isn't skin and bones, then where's the 1/3 of females you're telling me about and the 1/5 of males? So with anorexia, there are different subtypes called atypical anorexia. So the 6% that fall under what we call the typical anorexia can fall into the underweight category. The other 94% are in the atypical category, which in the ED community, we joke it should be flipped because there's more of us atypical. I just had a really, really bad relationship with food, and my fears would grow to the point where I would go days, weeks, months without eating sometimes. And on top of having anorexia, when I was hospitalized as a teenager for anorexia, and I got the tube back then too. There was rules. And so in order to call home, to check on my mother, to check on my little brother, you have to complete 100% of your meal. Everything from the skin on the chicken to the end of the all the things that you might leave on the no, you have to complete all of that. And so I had a friend that said, well, I know a way that you can get 100% meal completion, but you don't have to leave it in you. You can get it right back out. And so she taught me how to purge, and then that became an addiction to me. And especially in the military, when I would feel any kind of stress, some people would go to the smoke pit and smoke a cigarette, and I would go to the head and throw up to feel better. And we meet back, we go continue the mission. So my eating disorder was a little bit complicated and hard to diagnose because it was anorexia with a purging addiction. And, in fact, when I first had my eating disorder, back in gosh, we're gonna date me now, back in the 90s and then early 2000s. Atypical anorexia wasn't even in the DSM-5. I think there was only 4 eating disorders back then. So we've come a long way, and now there's 8 of them in the DSM-5 that cover more categories. But to really make it so simple, it is essentially a difficult relationship with food and or your body, except for one of the eating disorders we call ARFID. That one has nothing to do with body image. It has everything to do with textures of foods or fears of choking, other non-weight based fears around food. But the other 7 are generally tied to body image, body dysmorphia, things like that.
Okay, so now let me just summarize what I think I heard, and that is there are 8 types of eating disorders. So when you say ED, you're talking about eating disorders. And when you said the DSM-5, or what is that?
That's the medical guidebook of how to
Okay,
diagnose an eating disorder.
okay. So there are 8 types, and there are men and women, and we think we know, but we really don't. And uh, you found a purpose to educate people about that, or to provide care for that? What is your nonprofit like about?
Perfect. It's all that. And you summed it up just right, Sandy. Let me back up just a second and make sure you are right, males and females. I also want to point out any age. A large majority of the spike in calls that we're seeing recently is people above the 50 range bracket developing age. Correct. So it's any age, it's any background, it's any rank, it's any religion. The media has painted this as like a teenage white girl thing. That's not it at all if you look at the data and statistics. So, to answer your next question of what does Sea Waves do? Sea Waves is actually an acronym. I am a very nautical girl. I love all the nautical things, but it actually stands for everything that we do. So, it's support, education, awareness, wellness, advocacy, and validation for eating disorders and suicide prevention.
Would you just say that again?
Yes, and I'll give a little context to each one. So the S for support is we do resources and referrals. So we connect the military community, active duty, veterans, family members, caretakers. We connect them with the civilian eating disorder organizations, providers, treatment programs. So we act as a bridge and we help them navigate insurance, anything that's difficult to getting that support. The E is for education. So I go base to base or Zoom to Zoom, and I teach people what it really is and specifically how it shows up in our military community. Because even spouses and children in the military are 3 times more likely to have an eating disorder than our civilian counterparts. So I provide that education everywhere from military leadership to tonight we're training the crisis text line interns. We train the Wounded Warrior Project. The awareness is campaigns and letting people know this happens in any size body. Right now, we're running a campaign because there's a lot of talk around the fit, not fat. And we want our troops fit, not fat. But we have to talk about what that really means because the opposite of fat is not fit. The opposite of fit is not fat. So we do these awareness campaigns. The W is for wellness. So we partner with other organizations, usually veteran service organizations. Like for next year, we're going to put on 2 retreats. So we're going to put on some wellness retreats. We put on wellness events and symposiums. That's in the wellness space. The advocacy space. Right now, TRICARE doesn't have to pay for inpatient or residential treatment for anybody above the age of 21. And that's kind of how I almost died. I needed to be on the NG tube and there was no place to take me and TRICARE wouldn't pay for it. So I almost died. But we found a place and it all worked out. But I do a lot of advocacy because we got it passed into law in 2023 to change that age to 55. But like we just said, eating disorders don't disappear on your 55th birthday. In fact, we're seeing an increase right around then. So I advocate to get that coverage raised higher. The V is for validation. The military doesn't have a standard eating disorder screening like it screens for a bunch of other things. It's not in our annual physical health exam or anything like that. So we provide that validation of even though you may have never received a diagnosis or treatment, doesn't mean that your struggle doesn't exist. So we provide that. The E, of course, is eating disorders. And then the S is suicide prevention. What people don't realize is that the number one cause of death for somebody with an eating disorder is suicide. And so while there's so many of us that want to get out here and get after that 22 plus number a day that we're losing of veterans and service members, we have to acknowledge eating disorders as a mental health issue in order to reach that 1/3 of females and 1/5 of males that need resources.
Okay, my mind is blown. Right? I go, if you were going to take on a task, any one of those letters is a whole world.
It is.
I don't know how you sleep at night. Okay, so first of all, thank you for being a leader in the world of it. Sometimes we wish somebody else was the leader, right? Then I have a question about post traumatic stress because my husband's retired military, and I know disability often not rewards them, but contributes to their wellness in that area. But do they also see eating disorders as something to support a veteran in their wellness, or is that not yet surfaced to that point, like post-traumatic stress?
In some places.
Okay.
So my local VA here in Orlando has an eating disorder program. Some of the VAs have it, some of them don't. That's part of the work that we do through the advocacy is I connect the places that have it with the ones that don't. And like, this is the, don't recreate a wheel. This is the wheel that they've started. Try it here. And so it's growing. We are seeing a lot of what was missing, Sandy, was research, right? Because this wasn't screened in the military, we didn't have a lot of data until the
Right.
past couple of years. But there are some really amazing doctors and scientists and researchers that have made it their life's work to get this data that have we've seen the research that was done between 2017 and 2021. So, right? Before real COVID, right? We saw an increase in the military eating disorders of 71%.
Why?
And because we know what we're looking for now. We know
Oh,
what
I
to
see.
call it. We know some people are starting to tell their stories, but
Mhm.
right now when you're active duty, you can't admit to having an eating disorder because it could terminate your service. And so, but we also know that when people can and do find their voice, that they do, then, or they end up unfortunately in a hospital and then the numbers are taken from there. But, we've seen a lot more research since 2017. We definitely saw the increase of going up, what we're looking for, what it's called,
Mhm.
again, like, you think that you were kind of walking in blind. Many providers don't receive more than 15 minutes of formal eating disorder education. And so they don't know if they don't know to go check the DSM-5 to see that four more eating disorders have been added in the last few years, then they don't know what they don't know. That's what I find everywhere I go. I give my keynote speech, I'm writing a book, I train everywhere. Every single time I hear somebody say, I didn't know that I didn't know, even doctors.
Well, I want to draw a parallel to something that you said that's really important, and that is I live in a rural community, right? I'm 69 years old and world travel, been around the world. And so my world isn't contained in this one bubble. And now, because of Zoom, my contacts are global, my friends are global. So when you said, why reinvent the wheel? Well, if you don't even know there's a wheel, the education will help. And then instead of reinventing a wheel, connecting to what's available. So I'm sort of doing that also with the Pink Lady Posse for women who are over 50. I'm about to do a TED Talk. I'm so excited about it, about how long women live. Because we were just talking yesterday about check boxes when you register 25 to 34, 34 to 45, and then 50 plus. The average woman, 60 years old, is going to live 26 more years, but the registration form has 4 decades in one checkbox. So, how do you begin to service or have the right programs for the right age group when you've got 50 plus in a clump? It doesn't work.
Exactly. Exactly. And then you look at it, gosh, I'm sure you've had this conversation, but if we even look at the research and data around menopause and premenopause, and that's always existed generations. This is nothing new, but people weren't talking about it. Doctors weren't informed of how to, provide support. There's a lot of similarities in, where this growth is coming from. And like you said, now you have access on Zoom and social media, and you can pull people together and you can talk about what's normal, what's not normal, what you've tried, what didn't work, research that's been found, a great doctor that you found. You can complain when you have a terrible one. And I feel like we're seeing that growth with eating disorders as well. And I'll go so far as to say, Sandy, sometime we should talk about the overlap between menopause and the development of eating disorders because there is an overlap there as well.
No, that's so
Hormonal.
crazy. So crazy. Well, and the other thing, too, as if we didn't have enough to work on, the whole GLP-1 phenomenon that has happened in the last, what, 3 years has our brains like being reprogrammed to think and you can speak to this, but I know for me, I find myself going, I'm overweight. I want a GLP-1. Like it looks so great. It looks like the miracle. Speak to that.
Well, let me tell you that diet culture is a $64 billion a year industry. It is designed for us to fail. 95% of diets fail. In fact, you gain back more weight than what you were even trying to lose. That's how it's designed to fail. It's not us. It's not the diet. It's not willpower. It's none of that. It's all designed for you to have to go back and spend more money. These are further diet culture, but they're really, really honing in on the sheep's and wolf's clothing here. They're packaging it as a solution to diet culture. It's still diet culture, right? And it's still looking for a quick result up front that is going to bring you lots of side effects. And many times you have to be on this medication for the rest of your life and continue those side effects. And it's not being packaged like that. And we know what the media does, and we know the money that's being made through this. The only time that I have found myself feeling any kind of exception around these type big pharma drugs, unfortunately, are our service members. You have people that have served 15, 16, 17, 18 years, 19 years, and they can lose everything because of half an inch or half a pound. They can lose their retirement, their promotion, their orders, their reputation, their, all self-identity, all of those things because of half an inch or half a pound. And so, at that point, I have to say, could the quick results up front have a little bit more benefit in this case? Sure. But there is not a circumstance in which I recommend it to a civilian, and there is never a circumstance to where I recommend it for children.
Well, and it's almost like another eating disorder dependency, right? So is that number nine? I mean, it's kind of crazy.
No, it is. And there's so many things in diet culture that because we call it a different name, it's acceptable. You have to think, I was an EA in the military with an extreme eating disorder. People would point it out to me. They would say, well, Senior Chief, how come every time we have an event where there's food, you don't eat? All I had to say to make them not only shut up, but then pour out love and admiration and discipline, I just say, oh, I'm intermittent fasting. What do they say? Oh, you're amazing. You stick to that so well. You're so disciplined.
Oh my gosh. So,
Then I would try to hang out and get their distraction off of it. They would eat a slice of pizza. So I'd be like, okay, I'm going to eat a slice of pizza around them. They will see me eat a slice of pizza. Then I would either need to purge or force myself to go out and run 13.1 miles for every slice of pizza that I would have in the military. Nobody's ever going to tell you you're running too much. They don't care why I was running. I was running to work off a slice of pizza, but they say, you're so disciplined. We're so proud of you. Like, I want to be like you, just running a half marathon on a Wednesday afternoon.
okay, I need a grid to help my brain go, okay, support, validation, education, times eight types of eating disorders, times only one you. I was going to say, how many people are helping you in this nonprofit?
I have an amazing team. I have an amazing team of 10, and we're still growing. We're always growing because, I mean, the branches, this is just huge, and we're trying to get help everywhere. And then with recent, administration remarks has caused a lot of panic and chaos and people taking dangerous action. So we are in overdrive right now. That's why we had a little trouble getting scheduled for this. I have an amazing team. There are some things I don't delegate. The resources, the case management, I do a warm hand turnover to each one of the people that come to us looking for support. And so that part I completely do on my own. But all the other letters. We have a team for everything that's helping us. They're launching off another fundraising goal for us to get more funds to be able to reach more bases and really provide more support. But we really do have a great team, and we're always looking for more volunteers, team members, even board members.
Okay, so I was thinking about funding. Are you funded privately or with grants, or how does that work?
A little bit of
All of
everything. Yeah, we do the goulash of fundraising.
it.
We do some, on through social media. We did just get our first grant from the Carolyn Costin Institute. Carolyn Costin has really been a godmother to the eating disorder organization, to the eating. She was the first to found in the United States. She was the first to found a eating disorder residential treatment facility, and that went national. Just last week, we got our first grant from them. We've applied for a few federal grants, which of course are going to be on hold. And then we do fun things. We love self-care, so we raffle off spa certificates and self-care baskets and anything that can encourage people to love on themselves. So we do a variety of things.
Oh my gosh, I just feel so nourished by information, right? Like information that I haven't seen anywhere. And so thank you for the work that you're doing. Tell me about what it feels like to have the passion restored in your life, busy as you are. What is life like for you now?
Yes, busy, but in a lot of good ways too, because, we travel, and when I can, I travel with my husband. And so that gives us a chance to also spend time together. One of our retirement goals was to go to more of our NFL games. So I've been able to already align some of the training around the time that our NFL team is playing. When this airs, we'll be in Colorado, not only training some of the bases and the mental health organizations there, but also the Chiefs are playing the Denver Broncos. So we'll be there. So I've been able to kind of like make that balance, right? I'm going to be on the go. I know I'm going to be traveling, doing more speaking, but bringing, my husband wherever we can, working in the fun parts of it. My team is a lot of fun and super supportive, and really just having that balance. And then when you look at the mental health part of it, it's that, you know, for 28 of the 30 years that I had my eating disorder, it was a very, very silent, secretive thing. I lied to people, and I pride myself in being an honest, transparent person. It's one of my favorite things about myself. But through an eating disorder, you lie, you manipulate, and all of those things. And so that's kind of what launched Sea Waves was upon my mentor kind of like calling me out. He's like, you're never going to truly heal or be able to make a difference as long as you're secretive. So I poured my heart out on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Everybody found out at the same time, coworkers, family members, everybody. And so, it was ripping the band-aid off. A lot of people reached out to me, and then they were like, where do we go? What do we do? And there was no answer. So that's kind of why I knew I had to found Sea Waves. But in the light of that, it also, feels really good to not be in the dark, to not be, hiding and secretives. And I know that there's a lot of stigma. I know when I walk in a room and I say my diagnosis is anorexia, that a lot of people are like, not what I thought anorexia looked like. You hear the whispers. And it kind of feels good to be able to say, not a lot of people are able, especially our service members, to say, this is what anorexia looks like. But I'm able and I'm willing. And by the way, if you have any questions, I'll answer all of them.
Well, I am motivated, inspired, grateful, challenged, right? It's a whole emotional ball of wax. And I want to support you. And I also want to learn what you were talking about for the women 55 plus that eating disorders are on a rise. I'm in the 50 plus world and I don't know anything about it. So I
Now
think you
let's
put,
learn. A lot of our fellow ladies that are in the 55 plus range have been the in the Weight Watchers world, which is diet culture 101, sheep in wolves clothing. And so now they're transitioning into life and hormones, and food is a coping mechanism, and it changes. Oh yes, there's so much that we could talk about it with, but it is good to educate and where they are, because if you look at alcoholism and people that deal with that, on one level it's fairly simple that you can kind of avoid bars and places that have alcohol. But if you're struggling with your relationship with food, you have to make that decision multiple times a day. So it absolutely affects us at all ages. And I would love to talk more. Maybe we have a whole menopause eating disorder conversation one day. And also, people can reach out. You can follow us on our socials at Sea Waves Inc. You can visit our website. We're in the process of getting a new one, but it has a lot of great data and information on there. So SEA-WAVES.org. There's a volunteer form on there if you're interested in that. There's all kinds of ways to learn more and get involved. So thank you for being so willing to listen and get curious. These are the conversations that save lives, right? Eating disorders thrive in the dark. Suicidal ideas and ideations, they thrive in the dark. They're very connected. And to be the light, to shine a light on these things, and then you and I be a light moving forward, that's how we're going to tackle all these items.
I heard an analogy one time about a lighthouse, and I'm looking at it makes me think of it. It was like a lighthouse doesn't run up and down the coast trying to find who needs it, right? It stays steady and shines the light. So I just want to say, I see you doing that, and accessing that information is available because you're standing there sharing the light. And what's so great is we just now moved to video. So now we're on YouTube, and all the information, how to give money, where's the social, the website will be there. So you can share that link as well, and people can share it with each other. So, Leah, I know it took stopping in a run to sit down and have this conversation with me. And I just want to say thank you so, so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sandy. And thank you to all of our service members and veterans and family members that support our service members, because it's all part of our important ecosystem.
So let's do this. I'm just going to say, so thanks for being here, and happy Veterans Day.
Yes, thank you. Happy Veterans Day to our whole veteran community.
Thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks for tuning in to Pink Lady Posse Podcast, where women go from what now to what's next. Come join us at pinkladyposse.com, where we share community, resources, and tools to support your next beautiful chapter. With love, light, and a little lipstick. See you next time.